I love the Bengals bit over your shoulder from that Super Bowl that I'm going to say severely impaired my love of football as a young man.
Did it really? That was a month before I was born.
Yeah.
I was in the womb, and my dad still swears, you can chime in on this, my dad still swears if Tim Krumrie didn't break his leg, the Bengals win that
100%.
game.
They win the game. 100%. That's true. And now I was young. I mean, I was like 7 or 8. I mean, like I vividly remember watching his leg crumble, and I'd never seen that before because I was too young for the Joe Theismann broken leg.
Right.
And I remember seeing it, and I kept wondering, like, why were my parents like shrieking as they watched it? I didn't really understand what had happened. You know what I mean?
Sure. Yes. And I was so excited to do this. And then you just I forget, like, this is such a cool thing. I got this, by the way, at the Goodwill in Hilliard, right there on Hilliard Rome Road for $7.
Oh,
and it's maybe my favorite thrift store purchase ever.
That's the best.
And it kind of reminds me that there was a time when this franchise did well.
When we talked about Super Bowls, you know, I mean, when you talked about legitimately having all pro quarterbacks and, you know, and obviously I'm optimistic about things, but there are a lot of reasons to not be optimistic.
Correct.
But yeah, I don't know. I think it was a humbling way to grow up with a really bad. I think there's some really good things with growing up with a bad football.
Dude, I grew up in Florida, kind of between Miami and Tampa Bay. From when I moved there the day after my 4th birthday, moved back, I think when I was 10 or 11 to Ohio. But I'm not kidding you. I was wearing Akili Smith and Jeff Blake jerseys to school. Mm-hmm. Meanwhile, you've got Warren Sapp in this dominant defense in Tampa. You got Dan Marino down in Miami. Mm-hmm. And people forget, too, when Jacksonville first came into the league, I think 98 or 99, they were pretty good. I want to say their first or second year, they made the AFC Championship with Mark Brunell.
Yep.
And there's me as the Bengals go 3-13 every year, rocking an Akili Smith jersey at Mayaca River School Elementary.
It's one way to stand out.
Yes, we were talking about you've got to take your lumps as a child to build confidence. Maybe that's what it was that helped me. It's right. So, all right, welcome to the Good Old Football Podcast. So Oprah got Meghan and Harry. I knew I had to step my game up, and that's why we have Jerod Smalley, my former co-worker, my good friend of NBC4 fame. Of course, people in Central Ohio know him well. How are you, sir?
I'm great, man. I don't know that I can deliver the ratings numbers that Harry and Meghan delivered to Oprah. And I realized that because I watched the interview with my wife. And by the end, we were like, what's wrong with that royal family?
I didn't watch any of it. And I kind of wish, I feel like left out now. Like everyone else is at a party that I just didn't get invited to. I guess I knew it was going on. I didn't realize it was going to be that big of a deal.
I didn't either. I had no clue what I was getting into. Literally told about it on Sunday before it happens. I am not in any way concerned at all. And by the end of it, I'm like, yeah, they've got some problems over there.
Yep.
And I mean, it's fascinating though. Like when you think about television ratings this year, what rates? Because everything's down, right? Super Bowl was at a 30 or 40-year low, I think, this year. All of the big sporting events that ordinarily rate really well haven't. They're still the highest rated things on television in terms of like live sports, but they're just not the numbers that they were prior to the pandemic. But this was, I think, the 3rd highest rated show of television all over the last year. You know, obviously the Super Bowl and the show after the Super Bowl. And I think it's fascinating, you know, that's, it doesn't mean live sports are still the bell cow of television, but this is the stuff that people are really fascinated by. And,
it is reality TV. And I try to explain that because I have friends now who maybe when I would talk to them 5, 6, 7 years ago, our first conversation would be about sports. And now, while I don't do it, their first conversation will be about politics, which I hate talking about. However, I kind of, and people don't and I've said this with sports for years, it's reality TV that men are comfortable saying they watch. Same with politics. It's just reality TV for 98% of us. And that's probably what that was too.
Have you noticed that sports Twitter and Bachelor Twitter are very similar?
Yes.
And pretty much the same people.
And I've watched that show and I get how you get sucked into it. I just don't have the time or the patience to sit still for that long. But yeah, that's a great point. And I'd never thought of it that way. And that's a much better thing to get hooked on, however, I would say, than, you know, worrying about the politics of Where are they from? Where's the royal family? Is that Britain?
They're the Britons.
Okay. Can you tell I didn't do well in school?
What?
I feel like I should know. I should have known that before it came out of my mouth.
No.
Okay.
That's fine.
That's fair.
Look, I think one thing I think you learn in journalism is that you can't write scripts presuming that everybody in the audience knows everything you're about to talk about. And so that, there's that difficult balance you walk between quote unquote dumbing something down or just more thoroughly explaining something. And I think that's the part that, like, you have to find that very difficult line of what's too common that you can actually agree that we all know and move on. And sometimes I blow right past that. And that's probably one of my biggest mistakes I make as a broadcaster. Is sometimes I just presume everybody knows exactly what I'm talking about when they very clearly don't. And probably I don't either.
That's okay though. You're still great at it. I'll leave it at that. I will leave it at that. Let's talk about I know that you are, in my opinion, the authority on all things Ohio State. I am biased because I like you very much, and I have known you now for like 10 years, from intern to coworker and mentor and whatnot. Can we talk about, just because we started with the Bengals, I'll start by talking about this. You probably know the story better than most, and this is talking about things people don't realize. It's fascinating to me, and this just popped in my head earlier, how Joe Burrow, when he was transferring out of Ohio State, first, a lot of the people assumed because of his connections to Athens, he was just going to go to OU and have a nice little career on the MAC and see what happens. He supposedly wants to go to Nebraska, and Nebraska says, we don't see you as a quarterback. I don't think I need to explain the rest of what happened with Joe Burrow. What happened there? And is there anything I'm missing out on? Because that to me shows, hey, I mean, look, as much as we'd like to make fun of Nebraska since Scott Frost has been there, it's not like he's an idiot. It's not like that's a bad program. What all happened between that whole saga? And is there anything I'm missing out on? Because that to me remains and always will remain fascinating, how you could miss on something that big.
That's a great question. And it's something that I think people need to understand, because on the surface, it sounds like the dumbest decision ever, right? How did you miss on this guy who's from Ohio, who's in your program, and becomes the greatest, arguably the greatest college quarterback of all time for a single season? I don't think there's really a lot of argument that he's not. How did that happen, right? Well, it's a lot more complicated than that. And frankly, anybody who watched Ohio State spring games in the couple of years that Joe was in the program understood exactly who he was. You saw his talent, you saw his arm talent, you saw his ability to run it, which a lot of people, I think when they saw him, they learned of him, they didn't realize he was a phenomenal all-around athlete, incredible basketball player at Athens High School, a kid that could legitimately do it all. And I remember he played probably the most entertaining high school football game I've ever seen, the state championship game his senior year, where his team from Athens played against Michael Warren and Toledo Central Catholic. It was, I want to say, like 63-60, or final score was just ridiculous. Nobody could play any defense. And I remember on the sideline that night saying to our friend Matt Barnes, because Matt had come over for the game, and I was like, Matt, that kid's going to start at Ohio State. Like, he's not going to play. He's going to start. Like, he's phenomenally good. What happened was Urban Meyer faced this really difficult decision. When you have two kids who are both legitimately NFL quarterbacks, with Dwayne Haskins there as well as Joe, he knew that, and he faced the decision of who did he think was more equipped to run the offense. It's hard to say Urban Meyer got it wrong.
Oh, I totally agree with you on that. Although there are Bengals fans who, of course, in Cincinnati, you love Ohio State or you hate them. And there are people who love to say, well, what an idiot Urban Meyer was.
Right.
Two things, and you obviously know this. One, Joe Burrow was ahead of Dwayne Haskins on the depth chart before he broke his wrist in practice. And two, Dwayne Haskins, he broke some guy named Drew Brees' records all over the place in his single year. So I think it's fair to say, and by the way, Joe's first year at LSU, and Joe Burrow is my guy. He was fine. He wasn't great. He would have probably been like a 4th or 5th round pick. So yes, I am with you on that.
Yeah, it was one of those things where, sometimes in recruiting and talent evaluation at every level of the sport, decisions are made that in retrospect look silly. And we do this every year. We're getting ready to go through this again with the draft, where every year talent evaluators who are paid to figure this stuff out and get it right, get it wrong. And it happens at every level. And it's not, again, like, it's not like Urban Meyer and his coaching staff and all these guys got it wrong. I just don't think that they saw that massive jump in Joe that he was able to make from his junior year to senior year at LSU, and what he was able to produce in an offense, frankly, just tailored for him. And, Joe Brady developing Joe into just this elite, confident. I think confidence was never an issue with Joe Burrow, man. He believes in himself, and we're seeing it. We saw it as a rookie in Cincinnati. He believes in himself. That's a powerful drug, man. Like, when everybody in the locker room takes that drug, you become something different. He's got that. That's why that draft pick matters so much for the future of a team that both you and I care very much about. That's why I think it's exciting, the fact that he took that massive jump, but it wasn't really because he needed to see some quarterback guru or a sports psychologist. He believed in himself all along. That was never an issue. It was utilizing all of his skills. I'm so excited for what his future is going to be. He heals up well.
I don't think I've ever been this excited as a Bengals fan.
Yeah, I agree.
They've got to get it right, or I will break every window in my house.
Too extreme.
Yes. No, it's not. It'll feel good. I already broke one on accident a couple of weeks ago. So, what's 14 more or however many are in here? I don't think I have 14. Are you, and we don't have to dive in too much because I certainly don't know a ton about draft prospects like I used to, especially a guy like Panay Sewell, who I have not seen watch because he didn't play this year. Same with Jamar Chase out of LSU. There's a big debate amongst Bengals fans. Which route do you go? Do you have a preference?
Offensive line, please.
I am with you 1000%. And I've gone over this a million times. You show me Super Bowl winning teams rarely have a true number one receiver. They've always got B+ or better offensive lines. So I am with you all the way.
Yeah, agreed. I love, I think they've done a nice job through the depth of the draft over the last few years. You know what I mean? Like rounds 4 through 7.
Right. And they just can't get it right in the first round, or the injuries.
Yeah. They've been bitten a little bit, the injury problem, obviously it's not just a Joe Burrow issue. It's been the lingering issue with, John Ross and, some of the other things that they've had to deal with. But I still just think, I don't hate their offensive line overall. I think there's some individual abilities there. And we saw that at times, if we're completely fair about it. If you love an NFL team who's not very good, probably that's the universal complaint, right? Because your offensive line isn't very good.
Yes.
Why do you think that is? Because it's the first problem that leads to all the other problems. If your quarterback's under duress, you're going to make mistakes. If they make mistakes, you turn the ball over. You turn the ball over, you lose. It's not very hard to figure out. And that's where I think, if you invest in that part, you are therefore strengthening the biggest asset your team has, which is your quarterback. And if you strengthen your quarterback, you lessen your turnover risk, you increase your chances to win. It is a simple concept that, even if you have all pro guys, you don't need 8 all-pro receivers to win.
And it's not like the Bengals don't have any guys. I think Tyler Boyd and T. Higgins, that's maybe a top 5, definitely like a top 8 duo already. So yeah. I don't know why there's this. And look, it'd be great to fill that up, but protect Joe Burrow. And we saw this, I'm not going to put him in that class yet, but Tom Brady and Peyton Manning had receivers for years that you had never heard of suddenly get 80 catches for 900 yards and 7 touchdowns. Go sign a big contract somewhere else, and you never heard of them again. And why is that? Because they didn't have Peyton Manning or Tom Brady anymore.
Right.
And I think maybe Joe Burrow can get to that level. And, but you can't do that when you're being hit in the mouth every 3 seconds.
Exactly. And it gets old. And also it's establishing the run game. You saw it, this year, look at Pittsburgh. If Pittsburgh could run the ball at all this year, they'd have been something else. I mean, they were already off to an incredible start, but when they finished the year, they couldn't run the ball. And they just couldn't win up front anymore. That's where I think the difference is. I like Cincinnati's backs. I like their ability to run the ball.
Oh, yeah, totally.
They've got to have some space.
Yeah, I think that the offensive line is the only position on the offense where you have to upgrade. The other things you can get by with. So, all right. So I am tabbing this as a very Ohio State centric episode. So let's get into it. I'm watching, and we'll start because we mentioned Pittsburgh. I was watching this great show the other night. It's called NBC4 at 6.
Oh,
And the
yeah.
sports anchor, very handsome fella, he says that when Ben Roethlisberger's taking a pay cut, and then the legendary Colleen Marshall chimes in, she seemed happy about it.
Mm-hmm.
Who I think should be happiest about this, is got to be our guy, Dwayne Haskins, who
Yes.
I completely whiffed on. I really did think, and still do think, he can be excellent. What's your take on that, I guess? Because I think I just still look back at some of the throws Dwayne made at Ohio State. It wasn't 2 or 3. It was 4 or 5 a game where he drops it in a bucket, similar to what we saw Justin Fields do against Clemson this year.
I'll say this. You saw him do it in Washington.
Yeah, he wasn't that bad.
Games, yeah, he was not horrible. He made some decisions in some tight traffic where obviously coverage windows are much, much tighter than they are at the collegiate level. So obviously you get away with more, of course. He threw some picks in his Washington career that are ugly.
Sure. He also so did Joe Burrow this year, and everyone still loves him.
That's exactly right. Everybody's going to. I think the standard to which he was held was extremely high. He also is dealing with horrific ownership situations there with Washington. They went through a coaching change. And so you're dealing with different regimes and, coaches who are not necessarily saying the coaches did not give him a chance. I don't believe that at all. I mean, they actually gave him a couple chances. But I think that the overall issues for Dwayne are in his head and his behavior. He did some things from a professionalism standpoint this year, including the COVID protocols, that he is going to look back, I think, and regret later in his career. But you're exactly right. When you break it down to the brass tacks, the talent that lives within him, it's real. We have seen it, and it can work at the NFL level. And if he can mature in those ways that he has maybe slacked off a bit or hasn't performed to the level that he should have so far in the NFL, it is a steal to have him as your quarterback, I think, because in terms of talent, if we're talking about talent, right? Forget the other stuff. We're just talking about talent. There aren't many guys, I think, that are competitive with him. He's got the arm strength. He has enough running ability to get away. And I don't know. I think he is uber talented, but sometimes talent can be dangerous. And I think he's got to, perhaps this move will humble him and get him to a point where, he maximizes what he has been given by God, because he is a unique talent.
And it stinks so much because on one hand, and I said this before he was even mentioned as going to Pittsburgh, that's the best spot for him. That was the ideal landing spot for him. On the other hand, I want to see him succeed. I just like to see him do it in a different division. But that's life, I guess. I guess it would be fun to see him and Joe Burrow go at it, for the next decade or so. But we'll see if that ends up being the case. Obviously, a long ways to go. And by the way, we should say too, we talk about the off-field stuff. He wasn't doing bad person stuff. It's not like he was out there getting in trouble, doing anything illegal. He was just doing stuff that sometimes when you're 23, 24, and you've got a few $1 million in the bank, it's hard to resist day after day. And I get that.
Yeah, it's difficult, but in the modern NFL and the resources that are provided to players, it's a little harder to understand because there are so many reality checks. Man, it's the NFL at the combine every year. Obviously they didn't have combine this year, but combine every year they have guest speakers come in who are basically the Scared Straight program of the NFL. They tell you about how these guys blew all their money and off-field mistakes when it comes to drug and alcohol abuse and some of the things that just everyday ordinary people deal with who are not blessed with millions of dollars and the opportunities and the celebrity status. And I just think it's a fascinating social study. If you're in a sociology class, you probably do sports sociology just in a class on how athleticism and fame and the fortune that comes with it for some athletes, how it affects them as a person. And there are so many just crazy stories that I think are just fascinating. And sometimes they don't get up from it.
No.
And that's problematic. So I hope he's one of those great reclamation projects.
I am with you. We'll see what happens. Obviously, a great spot for him. Let's stick Now let's go to this first. Do you think Ohio State, they've kind of now have this reputation outside of Columbus anyways, you shouldn't draft their quarterbacks. I mean, obviously Cardell, who I think was a fine backup, just didn't live up to the hype. I mean, if he came out a year before, he was a top 10 pick. I think luckily for him, he falls to the third round the following year to Buffalo. And now, obviously, in the eyes of most, despite what you and I just said, Dwayne Haskins, a lot of people are already labeling him a bust. We obviously think that's ridiculous. Are these fair criticisms?
No, I mean, but the other thing that's weird, and we did this a little bit this year because frankly we had time on our hands to do it. There was not a lot of games being played. Look back at Ohio State at the quarterback position historically. It's weird that the program has been that successful, the second winningest program in college football history. And who's the greatest quarterback in the program's history? That is a debate that is a little weird.
Are we talking here NFL when they went to the NFL or just at Ohio State?
See, that's the argument you could make because obviously, Troy Smith won a Heisman at Ohio State, but statistically, his numbers wouldn't even have put him in the Heisman consideration.
Sure, it's all relative.
Later, that was, what was it, 2006 when he won it? So
yes,
when you think about what the criteria are for that, it's difficult to say, but it's also hard to say, like, is Joe Burrow the greatest quarterback to ever have worn an Ohio State uniform? I mean, probably is,
right?
But it's obviously he wasn't a star at Ohio State, and it's just been weird that they have been so mega successful for all these decades and haven't really had, for example, at Michigan, when Tom Brady was at Michigan, they were okay.
Sure,
they weren't national champion good, and it's this interesting combination of team and unique individual at quarterback that sometimes leads to magic and sometimes doesn't. And it's been weird with Ohio State. They have been blessed in the last few years to have quarterback after quarterback after quarterback who had a unique skill set, right? Like Terrell Pryor, unique, different kind of athlete, an athlete so good he could change positions and survive in the NFL. And then you go to Braxton Miller, who was, the X button on your PlayStation, just could do anything athletically. Not a great passer, but made enough on target throws to become a real threat to defenses. And obviously was a, multi-time MVP of the Big Ten. You don't get that for being okay. So you go from those guys to like Dwayne Haskins to, like I said, Cardale to, what JT Barrett did is extraordinary for a 4-year career.
I'm sitting here thinking in my mind all the guys, and I don't know, JT Barrett played at Ohio State obviously for 26 years, and somehow he just didn't pop in there. And the thing is, they've all made it to the NFL. They've all got their shots as you would expect them to, just none of them popped. And you could argue too that maybe the two, one guy that always comes to mind for what could have been would be Art Schlichter.
Sure.
And then same with Terrell Pryor. I mean, Terrell Pryor, look, man, I was at Ohio State at the same time as Terrell Pryor. The guy was a jerk. There's no other way around it. At least on campus, he had a reputation. He was not an easy person to get along with. And you kind of wonder if you could just get the talent to match up with the mindset, what would have been for both those guys. Obviously, Art, a different story, a much more, kind of sad story there. But yeah, and I think I looked it up a while ago. I could be completely wrong on this. So if you're listening to this, please go look it up yourself before quoting it, hanging out with your friends tonight. I think like Ty Detmer might have the best stats of anyone who played at Ohio State. Ty Detmer, that's right?
Are you thinking of Tom Tupa?
No, Ty Detmer played at Ohio State, right?
No.
Am I wrong on that?
Ty Detmer was at BYU.
Who am I thinking of who played for the Eagles? Maybe he was there at the best.
Mike Tomczak?
No, I don't know who I'm thinking of.
Well, because I'm thinking of the 80s.
It might be Mike Tomczak. I could have swore there was someone who started for the Eagles for a while. By the way, I wasn't alive during all this.
I was going to say you were not even a fetus at this point, but no. Yes, it's Tomczak, Tupa, both played in the 80s at Ohio State and both went on to NFL careers. Tupa obviously much more so as a punter, but was an incredible punter at that level.
How wild is that someone went from Ohio State quarterback to NFL punter?
Yeah, I mean, he's crazy talented. And
I've spent my whole life thinking Ty Detmer played at Ohio State. I don't know why.
Yeah, Ty won the Heisman at BYU, and they had that
and he
one.
won a Heisman.
Yeah,
I feel
incredible.
stupid right now, Jerod.
Don't do it.
I'm going to break a window.
You don't beat yourself up.
I'm glad to have learned something today.
As a true podcast host, here's the best thing you could do. Edit it out.
No way. No, that's so much work. This is going start to finish. I'm laying it down and hitting export. I'm not going to mess with all that clipping.
Yeah, that's overrated. But I think, I think to your original point about the quarterback history at Ohio State, it's been fascinating. They've had just incredible players there, but they aren't necessarily great. I mean, my God, Craig Krenzel, what a quarterback in college, right? And he did play several years with Chicago, and he's not a superstar by any means, but did exactly what that team needed him to do to win every game, including beat one of the great college teams of all time from Miami in 2002. And, it's been this fascinating group of guys that are just great college football players. Just great, how else could you describe JT Barrett? Great college football player, man. He just won all the games, and it wasn't prototypical. It wasn't always the prettiest, but he was an incredible leader, great athlete, and somebody that coaches put a lot of trust in. Those values it's one of those ways you define the difference between college football and the NFL. They are not similar. They're more dissimilar than they are similar.
And I think it goes back a little bit to Joe Burrow too. And really, if you look around the NFL, I am just a big believer in that to get to that fifth or sixth or whatever gear, you need a chip on your shoulder. It happened with Tom Brady. I mean, Peyton Manning's one of the only guys who went number one overall and lived up to the hype. You even look, a guy like Ben Roethlisberger played at Miami, wasn't good enough to play at Ohio State, gets a little irritated. Baker Mayfield couldn't get the job at Texas Tech, had to go elsewhere. Lamar Jackson couldn't play anywhere. But I'm just going AFC North right there. Louisville was, I don't think he had that many D1 offers. I could be wrong on that. I got to start. I need someone here to fact check me, but you get the point. Even going back before him, Joe Flacco had to transfer out of Pitt and play at Delaware. And look, say what you want about him. He's got a Super Bowl MVP and has been in the league for over a decade. So I think maybe I'm just a big believer. And that's why speaking of BYU, I want to see in this upcoming draft, Zach Wilson go ahead of Justin Fields. I think if you look, man, Zach Wilson, I don't really know much about him. I know that he could only score 17 points against Coastal Carolina, a golf school. And I find it insane that Justin Fields goes and does that against Clemson, and still, for whatever reason, a lot of people think Zach Wilson will be the better option, and maybe he will. However, I don't see how you put that together. But if I'm Justin Fields' agent, I'm saying this is exactly what I want. I want him to go in there. Yeah, you were the number 3 quarterback off the board. You couldn't beat out who was it at Georgia? Plays for the Bills now, I want to say. Can't remember. Matt something, right? Jake Fromm.
No,
is it Jake Fromm?
Jake Fromm.
Jake Fromm. And
Jake from State Farm. Yeah.
Yes, him too. I think that's a great thing. Do you think that's crazy? Have you paid more attention to Zach Wilson? I mean, what am I missing here?
I've loved watching him. I think he had a great year. I thought he played with some energy and some spark for his offense that was infectious. And I think that's what the thing that, when the intangibles come up about a quarterback, right? Those are some of the things that get mentioned. The effect on a huddle, the effect on, a sideline, how do they motivate the room?
You're talking about Zach Wilson right now.
Zach Wilson.
Okay.
Yeah. I think he just had an incredible year, and watching him play, you're right. I mean, Coastal Carolina was not a great game. We know they're a pretty good team though. But I do think that overall, I love his talent, man. I agree with you that I don't see how Justin Fields is not a candidate to be the number 1 pick.
And he was for about 20 minutes after the Clemson game, by the way.
Right. That's right. Wait a minute. What do we it's just amazing how many times you can break your neck following the rise and the fall of every athlete.
Do you remember back when there was just one, everyone got to do one mock draft and that was it. Now everyone's got a new one every 3 days, and it drives me insane.
Right. Right. Because of something some scout told them from the Rams or whatever, and it leads to this chain effect of, people moving. But I think I just think Justin Fields overall in 2 years at Ohio State, not even a full season, he played what, 8 games this year. When you look at his career and his talent, my gosh, man, just what a career and what a talent. A guy who is still going to improve at the next level, I think. I mean, one of the great benefits now of these kids starting to recruit to Ohio State, these 4 or 5 star mega recruits who are trying to play quarterback now for Ryan Day. Because Ryan coached quarterbacks in the NFL level. He is preparing kids quite obviously for that jump and what is demanded of a quarterback at that level. So Justin Fields is nothing more than the poster child for that development process, right? You took a kid who, like you said, but even though he was young at Georgia, they had to have known what they had, right? They had to have known that. I mean, obviously he and Trevor Lawrence are right there together. They've always been linked together because of their, proximity in Georgia growing up and coming out of college and all that. I just think that his ability to throw on the run, his ability to put the ball on the money, his accuracy rate was extraordinary. His downfield targets are on target. Do you know what I'm saying? Like he throws an accurate football deep.
Yeah, you can watch 30 seconds. 5 plays out of Clemson, and those are NFL corners he's going against, and he's dropping it in a bucket.
Yes, like where his guy could catch it.
Yes,
and no one else could. I just think he is talented at a level that is just unique. His athleticism, and most of all, Matt, the thing that I think everyone is going to run to: toughness.
Yeah,
he gets hurt in games, gets up, comes back onto the field. How many times did he get hurt, come back onto the field, and the next play make an impact play or throw a touchdown?
Was that against Alabama? Is that the right? He got clobbered, right? And
I'll give you a couple examples of it. The Michigan game, his first year as a starter, Michigan game, gets hurt. They put a big old brace on his knee. His knee was already dinged up anyway. And, he's out for a play. There was timeout in there. He's out for a play, trots back onto the field, immediately throws a touchdown to Garrett Wilson. And it was a play where he had to roll out to his left. So he's a right-handed quarterback, has to roll out to avoid the rush, roll out to his left, again, just hurt his knee, posts up, throws the ball on an absolute rope to Garrett Wilson, first play back. Against Clemson, takes that huge shot from Skalski. Out of the game. We don't know at that time. We don't know what he's got. We don't know if he's got broken ribs or, it looked awful, right? I mean, obviously, Skalski got thrown out of the game. And he's out for a play, comes back in, first play, touchdown. And again, a play where he had to run. He had to move to his right. It was a rollout pass. Moves to his right, throws a strike to Olave, corner of the end zone. He is tough. And that is the element that I think when it comes to separating people out of league where it's a survival league. NFL, yeah, talent matters, but you better be there to play. And how many times have elite players gone to the next level and just can't cut it because of the mental demands, the physical demands, playing hurt all the time? What that does to you mentally, we can't fathom that. And I wouldn't dare try to guess what it's like, but I'm sure it's not fun. But he has already proven in his young career that he's capable of doing that and being awesome, not just a guy, but being a leader and being a star when he's facing those challenges.
And that might be a little bit of that chip on the shoulder stuff I was mentioning, just kind of showing through already. So I'm excited. And here's the other good thing about if he does go behind Zach Wilson, and it's sounding more and more like he will, maybe you don't end up going to the New York Jets, which is not a bad thing.
Agreed. Yeah, avoid that if you can. That is a bad situation. And you know what? The Atlanta Falcons, if he ends up there, which I know is a possibility anyway.
Or Carolina, either one of those spots, I'd love to see.
Either way. I mean, for a kid from the southeastern United States, specifically from Georgia, if Atlanta called his name and a kid from Georgia is the quarterback of the Atlanta Falcons, I can't imagine a more exciting opportunity there. And it's kind of like Joe being quarterback of the Bengals. I mean, it's just it's a beautiful thing when sometimes that can happen. and maybe it can spark greatness. Obviously, we're, as Bengals people, hoping that it sparks greatness in Cincinnati, and perhaps we see that this as soon as this year.
That would be very lovely to see this year. I would enjoy that quite a bit.
I'm tired.
They have not. I was not yet 2 years old the last time they won a playoff game.
Oh,
Are you drinking water or coffee, by the way?
oh, this is coffee, but I've got water here. But yeah, that caught me by surprise. That's not good.
No, and I have gray hair now. A lot of it.
Well, but here's the difference, though. You're in the point in your life where you are growing hair at a luxurious rate.
And I don't get it. I literally have to pluck it out of my forehead. I was telling the missus last night, I've got the chest hair and the beard are going to connect before long. I might be a werewolf. I should get like a DNA kit and see.
That's interesting.
It's a bit worrisome.
When the two hair paths merge.
Right. You probably can't tell on here, and no one wants to see that anyways. But yeah, they're getting there. And also, that's not the only one. I've got like a bridge going from the eyebrow to the hair here.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I see that. Yeah.
I might be full werewolf.
I think it was Dr. Seuss who said that why fit in when you were born to stand out?
Sure.
Just saying.
What book is that?
I don't know.
I don't know either.
I'm not even sure it's Dr. Seuss.
I'm saying Ty Detmer played at Ohio State, so certainly you can say that Dr. Seuss said whatever you want. By the way, I should also clarify, I am someone who, very different than a lot of my peers, being from Central Ohio. I was never really an Ohio State football fan until like that Troy Smith year. My dad's not a big college football fan. I think he rightly kind of got, he's just not, one, he always works on Saturdays, and two, just college football is a lot more predictable than the NFL. Big NFL guy, which led to me being a big NFL guy. But yeah, Ty Detmer didn't play at Ohio State.
It's fine.
What are you going to do? That's just going to eat at me for weeks, and you know it.
Don't you do this now.
I've got Jerod Smalley on here. I'm trying to compete with Oprah for ratings, and I say something stupid like that. What are you going to do? Tell me this. Mike Vrabel, Urban Meyer, who's got a better shot at winning a Super Bowl in the next 5 years?
I think Mike Vrabel, just because I love the way that they've tried to assemble their team in Tennessee. I think, Tannehill's a fine quarterback. I don't have any big issues there. I think they've had some, obviously I love their running game right now. Now, obviously you don't know how long the shelf life is of that, but I love that part of it. I just think the Jaguars have so far to go, and we just have no idea what Urban as an NFL coach is going to be. The tactics, Urban was a psychology major at Cincinnati, and the tactics of motivation that he has employed throughout his college career worked wonders. Anybody who likes to take shots at Urban Meyer for his college career, come on, man. I mean,
totally.
He won 3 national titles, built, teams that were, look, Ohio State had a losing record the year before he showed up.
And then they went undefeated the next year.
The next year. And then what he did at Florida, where Florida was kind of struggling a little bit. And then he went out and found these dudes, and he built that into a star program. And even, in the, say what you want, man, the SEC, it is hard at week to week to show up and play these top 10, top 15 teams. It's kind of like what the Big Ten is in basketball this year. Every game you're playing a team as a top 10, top 15 team. And, the talent equates. He still excelled. I just don't know how that translates to the NFL with grown men.
I wonder
how much that motivation will work.
It's similar to what, and we don't know this yet, but Jim Harbaugh came in with much lower expectations, I would say, than Urban to San Francisco. Sure. And I don't want to compare them as coaches because they are very different, but they both do have personalities that I think fit the college game better, although it really hasn't seen that with Harbaugh yet. But Harbaugh definitely at the end of year 3, year 4 was rubbing his guys the wrong way. Is that kind of what you're saying? You worry that, 32-year-olds aren't going to respond to Urban like 21-year-olds do?
It's just hard to say, right? I think you look back historically at college coaches going to the NFL. You have this pile, which is a big pile of guys that didn't work, who were incredible, like Steve Spurrier. Guys who were just great college coaches who at the NFL level, it just didn't materialize. Lou Holtz is in that group, and you can go on and on and on, right? But over on this side, you've got Pete Carroll, And you've
who, by the
got,
way, coached the Jets and the Patriots in the 90s and did not go well. So,
right, exactly. Yeah. Over here, you've got, Dick Vermeil
was he a college coach before?
Yeah. Oh, incredible coach.
See, I don't remember, again, before my time.
Yeah. And Dick had an incredible career, was a great leader at UCLA. They beat Ohio State in a Rose Bowl. He gets the job with the Eagles, and the Eagles go to the Super Bowl. I mean, like he did an incredible job. And then he won a Super Bowl later in his career with the Rams. So, I mean, he just did a great job of making that transformation. It's hard to make. And that's my curiosity, right? Like, this is not going to be a quick fix. I don't care who they draft. If they draft Trevor Lawrence or Justin or whoever it might be, it doesn't matter. They have got so many issues to resolve there that I think it's just going to test everybody's patience. And maybe in a couple of years, we'll have a much better idea of where they are competitively.
You mentioned, to me, it's not even being considered that they might draft Justin Fields, and you mentioned him there. Do you think there's an actual shot that could happen?
I don't think, with Urban Meyer being there and him having an understanding of who Justin Fields is as a player in person, that is a level of expertise that not many head coaches would have on a college kid, because they're ordinarily not coming to that level from the insight that Urban had on him. So I think that's the curiosity, right? If he has a great pro day and he's healthy and he can run and he can do all those things that scouts want to see him do, I don't know why he wouldn't be considered. I think he's just too good a player. Obviously, Trevor Lawrence is great, right? He's great, and there's no reason to think that he would be a mistake to take it number one. But I do think, as we have seen many times in this process, that delicate little dance that happens near the top of the draft, and rumors start flying, and trade proposals, and all these things that happen, I would not take it out of the question at all that Justin could go number one. I don't think it's likely, but I think when the positioning is over, there's a chance he could.
People forget too. This is just one of those goofy things I think about a lot. Probably 48, 72 hours before the draft. I guess it would have been 2018, whenever Baker Mayfield was drafted. 48 hours before, really, I don't know that he was in the top 3 considered like a favorite to go to Cleveland. So now look, Trevor Lawrence is obviously a higher rated prospect, but I like that you point that out. I would love it if something crazy like that happened. And obviously at that point, the Jets, then at that number 2 spot, could get 1,000 first round picks in exchange for Trevor Lawrence. So interesting that you bring that up. I mean, I'd love to see something like that. The draft is going to be so fun this year. And I hope, because we haven't seen that. Like last year was just such a letdown. You expect all those trades. I think last year was like the least amount of trades in the last 7 or 8 years, something like that. Just because there was, I don't know why, but yeah, I'm with you on that.
Hey, let me ask you a question about being a podcaster, if you don't mind. But I completely change the subject. Do you have ads?
I do not have ads. You know what? I have the option to plug my ads in through the site that hosts this, but I don't do it. I mean, I do this more for fun than anything. I did kind of tell myself a reason I'm having you on and I don't really like doing this show by myself. So I kind of told myself, and I've not really told maybe a couple friends this, I have decided within the last month, like I either need to have guests on regularly or I'm not going to do it anymore. I just don't like sitting here talking by myself. I could talk to you all day, and a lot of people like that, but no, why do you ask? I've never tried to get ads either.
Well, I'm a podcast nerd. I listen to
same.
I'm subscribed, I think now to almost 20.
Oh, wow.
Which is a lot, which is robust listening. And sometimes you skip an episode if you're not particularly into the guest or, the topic or whatever, you can move on.
No one doing that on this one.
Right. It's a beautiful thing about it, right? Everybody's got their preferences, what they think. Like, and for me, mostly, as you know, I'm a comedy nerd. So most of my stuff is just guys that tell jokes or people who tell jokes for a living.
What are your favorite comedy podcasts?
I love Comedy Bang Bang. Very funny. I love Conan O'Brien's new podcast. Oh, it's not all that new. It's a couple of years old now. There's some really dumb ones like Hollywood Handbook. I think is absolutely hilarious. All these really, it's really niche-y kind of stuff. Have you heard Rob Lowe's podcast?
I have not. I listened to him when he was on someone's podcast, and I listened to it, and he was really interesting. Is his podcast good?
Podcast is hilarious. And like, it's a lot of people who you're like, how does he know this person? Like, it's a fascinating thing about celebrities. But yeah, his podcast is great. He had Barkley on last week, so I love that. A couple more, I'll tell you. Anything with Paul F. Tompkins is great. Never Not Funny, which is one of the original podcasts ever created. Jimmy Pardo, if you remember him, the old stand-up comedian, is great. Mike Birbiglia's new one is great that he started during the pandemic, where he just talks to other comedians about jokes, like working out material.
Right.
Like, they tell jokes.
I think it's called Working It Out, right?
It is.
Yeah.
They tell jokes that are broken and try to fix them.
I saw Birbiglia on Broadway while I was in New York, by the way.
Oh, yeah.
I was at the Netflix taping. If you watched his Netflix special,
kidding.
the new one. Yeah, I was there.
Wow. That's
very cool. Yeah.
Anthony Jeselnik's podcast he does with Greg Rosenthal of the NFL Network. Hey, that's okay. No. We're just saying hi.
Yeah.
This is an actual podcast. My wife just walked through, and as you know, Matt, she's a big fan
of
you.
Oh, that's nice. I'm a big fan of her.
Yeah. She's out here doing like good work for people, like to help like nonprofit organizations succeed. And
she does.
I'm very much working for a profit organization.
Well, yes, that is also true. So wait, do you listen to Jeselnik and Rosenthal?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
By the way, a couple of Pittsburgh guys went to Upper St. Clair High School. I know we have some listeners from Upper St. Clair, so shout out to them.
Yeah. I mean, big Pittsburgh guy. Mary Ellen's a Pittsburgh girl. She went to Moon Township.
Oh, okay. I know Moon.
SVP Pod, hilarious every week. They
Love
just
Van
do a
Pelt.
great job on that. Yeah. I think they're great. The Good Old Football Podcast. I don't know if you've heard that one, but it's really good.
I have, yeah. The guy's an idiot, though. He thought Ty Detmer went to Ohio State.
Dude, you've got to give yourself a breath on that one.
So why do you ask if I have ads then? Just
one of the things about podcasts that I love listening to ad reads, because some of the people who do podcasts have a particular style of ad reading that is fascinating to me. You can't read an ad like you're reading an ad, right?
Right.
You have to make it this part of like conversational, like, oh, this is another part of the show. We just happen to be talking about Magic Spoon, or we just happen to be talking about like, name your random podcast product.
Yes.
Tommy John underwear or whatever it is. It is fascinating to me.
I think Bill Burr is the best at that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Bill Burr does that, and he's lost so many. Lost so many sponsors because he just
no doubt.
He'll be reading the ad copy and he'd be like, "What are you going to do with this? Why would you do that? Whatever." Anyways, Magic Spoon cereal.
Right, like Jeselnik was talking last week that they had one of their advertisers had not complained, but had asked that in future ad reads they not discuss God while discussing the product.
Well, that's nice.
And I was like, wow, man, that's. I'll give you one other podcast that I really, if you're a sports fan, that I loved, and I know it's going to be changing now, but the Jay and Dan podcast in Canada. Sure. Jay Onright, Dan O'Toole. Dan O'Toole recently let go by TSN in Canada, so there is no more Jay and Dan podcast, which stinks. Their dynamic was awesome, and they're two of the just great TV guys. They're a great pairing. Sometimes, in TV, in sportscasting in particular, individually, some people might not shine, but together they both lift each other up, and they have these personality traits that just kind of click and lifts the whole product. And that's what I think Jay and Dan was. Their podcast, you learn a lot about Canada, about Canadian culture. If you're into hockey at all, it's a great podcast to know what NHL insiders are thinking about your team. So obviously, if you're a Blue Jackets fan, it's relevant because they're always an interesting conversation topic. So yeah, I'm a podcast nerd, and that's why I was curious, because it's a fascinating genre that we're all kind of just now learning how it actually could work.
Sure. I did look into it at one point. I think that you need to be, I want to say, averaging like 5,000 listens per episode before you should really consider even trying to get sponsors, and I am not there. I think this might be the one that gets me there, but
it should be.
It should be. It totally should be. So we'll see. I'm with you. I'm a podcast nerd though. And I will not say who. I went to a former television person who was above me many years ago and said, hey, like I've been listening to podcasts a bunch. Like maybe we could look into that. And they were like, nope, those things are just a fad. It's like,
Yeah.
well, maybe, but they're not. They're really good. And everyone my age listens to them. And you're trying to get everyone my age to watch television. So, but whatever. I mean, you miss out on those sometimes, and it happens. I do love it though. It's so easy. I love flipping them on because I can't sit still and watch TV outside of live sports. I just can't sit there and watch like I have to be loving a show, just hooked on it to actually sit there and watch it, which is very critical about television and movies because it's a lot of time. So, but I love being up and doing stuff and listening to stuff. So, I'll have to check some of those out.
It's like, but your point about podcasts is valid because it's people want to do things on their schedule. They want to do things at their convenience, at their speed. That's why Netflix and streaming services are so valuable now in the culture, where you can binge, you can watch a whole show, a whole series if you want in a night, or you can watch it over weeks or months. In broadcast television, that is a more difficult thing. Even with the advent of the DVR, you still have to set the DVR. You have to get it, programmed. It's one more step. But one of the things that we've learned about local news during the pandemic is that people have come more to local news now. They've always come to local news, but people have come now more to local news because of the polarization of the country. Local news is basically the place that meets in the middle, where I don't care whether you're a Republican or Democrat, who scored more points in the game. You know what I'm saying? Like
absolutely, yes.
Nothing changes about that. What the weather is going to be doesn't depend on who the president is or what Congress did that day. Is it going to rain or not? That's the stuff that we can do.
You should throw to, if you ever get a chance to throw to Dave for his final weather, that's how is it going to rain or not?
I have. That's exactly, I did every time that I've anchored news and thrown to Dave for like last weather, I've tried to give him something that I did not prepare him for, just intentionally to try to screw him up to see how I would handle it.
And it never works.
It great.
Yeah.
No, he's always great.
Yeah, he's the best.
Dave Mazza, first of all, he's crazy accurate. Like he gets stuff right, which is the big knock on weather people, right? Mm-hmm. They don't get stuff right. Whatever. If you watch Dave and pay attention, he is on the money. He and of course, our whole staff is really good. But Ben Gelber, I mean, my God, for almost 40 years, he's been getting it right because he's a genius. He knows.
Yes, he is. On. And he works every day. Can you guys let him go home?
No.
I was watching on
Gelber lair in the back, and we just throw treats in there and just keep him fed. He's fine.
I was watching, I saw him on midday one day, and then he's working on a Sunday morning one day, and
yep.
But he did that when I was there too.
Tie.
Yeah,
same shirt and tie.
He's the best.
That tie might be held together by staples. I can't confirm that. I'll try to get a closer look.
You should. Can you investigate that for us?
I'll find out.
It is good. You guys, you have a great crew there that I was happy to be a part of. And I'm glad I like flipping. And I'm with you 1000%. Like I try to tell people all the time who watch this trash, whether it's Fox News or MSNBC or in the evenings, CNN's every bit just as bad. Watch your local news. They'll tell you what's important. And then after that, spend time with your family. Quit thinking the world. Again, it's reality TV that people are watching. It just is not as scripted as the Kardashians or The Bachelor, I suppose. Or maybe it is.
But most of the things that affect people's direct lives are the things that we're talking about, right? Their local
Correct.
Sports teams, their local government, their local school, local. That's the stuff that really impacts your direct life. There are obviously things that are happening at the macro level that are very important to everyone. But the things that affect your day-to-day life are the stuff that's going on in your neighborhood, in your city, in your region. And that's the stuff that, more than ever, I think people are understanding now, which is weird because, again, the culture has been more, that from the entertainment standpoint anyway, leaning away from broadcast, right? And ratings have come down and so many things. Obviously, we're still, television sports are still the thing that, like we were talking earlier, that's the thing that people watch by mass numbers. But despite that, people still are coming to local television and local radio and websites as well as much as they ever have, because we're providing them a service that is unique in the current climate. And that's still a really cool thing to be a part of. It's pretty exciting, the fact that all of these things have evolved and changed, and we've evolved and changed. I've evolved a lot in the 20 years that I've been doing it.
Sure,
But,
yeah.
The cool
It evolved a lot in the 8 years that I did it. So
yes, yeah, exactly. And we all kind of it's one of those businesses where you either evolve or you get left behind.
One of my favorite quotes, and you'll deny that you ever said this, but I interned for you in 2011 or 2012. And you said to me, and I don't know if it's something you say all the time, but it's the most accurate thing in every aspect of life. If you're not always trying to get better, you will get worse. And I think it applies to everything.
It does.
And
it does.
I'm sure Michael Scott has that hanging on his wall. Quote Jerod Smalley and then quote Michael Scott.
And quote Michael Scott. I'm a firm believer that if you're not getting better, you're getting worse. But I think that that can mean a lot of different things to different people, right?
Sure.
But getting better isn't just growing up. I think a lot of people think that if I just grow older and I learn more things, then I'll just get better, naturally, right? That it'll just I'll just absorb all that knowledge in, and I'll just spout that out like I'm smarter. And that's not how it works. It's constantly a game. Like, let's say, for example, you're an athlete. Let's say, for example, you're an NBA player going into season 12. Athletically, you're not going to be the player you were in season 1. But how are you going to be better? Obviously, you've learned things, but you have to evolve as a player. You have to evolve as a teammate. Or you get left behind. And I think that's the same way in everyone's business life. I think no matter what you do for a living, if you're not a more creative employee, if you're not a more interesting, accomplished employee in year 5 than you were in year 1,
doing something wrong.
Yeah, like you need to change businesses. And I think the one thing about television in particular, the one thing about broadcasting, let's just even in a bigger circle than that, is if you are fascinated by what you do and you want to get better, and I try new stuff all the time, that sucks. I do.
It goes back to comedy.
Yeah, it absolutely 100%, Matt. Being a stand-up comic and being especially a sportscaster, being a broadcaster, are not all that different. We try stuff all the time that bombs. I tried a joke 2 weeks ago that legit, I looked over at Colleen Marshall and Kerry Charles. They had no idea what I was talking about, not even a clue. And I can tell you what the reference was, but nobody in the audience will probably remember either.
Oh, now I got to know.
Well, I wrote a reference to a song about, do you remember the song Relax, Don't Do It from the 80s?
Sure. Well, I know it. I don't remember it, but yeah.
It was by a band called Frankie Goes to Hollywood. And there was this shirt, if you Google it, Frankie Says Relax. That was a huge pop culture thing in the 80s where people, like, it's even in The Wedding Singer, where somebody in the movie is wearing the shirt that says Frankie Says Relax.
Great movie. Don't remember the shirt.
Right. I wrote that in a script. And I forget I was talking about, I was talking about the Blue Jackets. It was what it was, because John Tortorella was talking about his team to relax. So I wrote Frankie Says Relax. And I looked over and they're like, what are you talking about? And I'm like, okay, whiff. That's a whiff.
But I'm sure
much better about what I did because I tried something.
Of course. And I'm sure some people at home loved it. Maybe not thousands, but maybe, 50, 100 or whatever. Someone loved it. One guy maybe, but they loved it.
One guy who thrived in the 80s.
Yes, that's still his ringtone.
That's right. That's right. The biggest Frankie Goes to Hollywood fan in Central Ohio.
Yeah, you made that guy's week.
That show. That's right. Hopefully he has a ratings book.
Yes, that would be nice. Is that still a thing, or is TV ratings still done by individual? I thought they were doing away with that.
Yeah, you have the people meters they use, and all the other metrics. There's a bunch of different services you use. Yeah, I mean that's the stuff. We try stuff all the time that fails, and if you don't, what are we doing?
Yeah, you're just living and dying. Just do whatever. I tell people that all the time. They get upset over little things. It's like, chill out, man.
Did you ever see the Seinfeld documentary that he did called Comedian, where he scrapped his whole act?
Yeah,
It's
with
back in the
Orny
early
Adams. Yeah.
2000s.
Hmm.
And there's some cringe stuff in it too. Like he and Bill Cosby were friends, and you go back and watch it now and he talks about how genius like Bill Cosby is. And you're like, oh boy. But there is some stuff that really does stand up. And one of the things he does, he gets up on stage and bombs
Oh yeah.
hard. He's at the Gotham Comedy Club one night, and a woman in the front row is heckling Jerry Seinfeld. And she's a British woman, and she says, "Is this your first gig?" to Jerry Seinfeld. And I'm like, if that's why I have such a love for comedy and such a love for comedians, is because our jobs, while obviously not the same, aren't all that dissimilar. We've got a guy that we know, Billy Griffin, who's a former intern of ours as well. Billy played quarterback at Ohio Dominican, is now a working stand-up comedian in LA. And when Billy will send me his sets and I'll watch through what he does, I have so much admiration for him. And I think a lot of those skills are learned from the confidence of being on television. You have to be. Doesn't mean you have to go out there fearless, because you don't. But I think you have to have that confidence to go out and perform in front of audiences and know that sometimes it will not go perfectly. In fact, it'll go really wrong sometimes. And how you navigate those really wrong moments those are the people who can succeed, and sometimes can't. And that's okay. It's not for everyone.
Yeah, I was just telling a young guy that the other day who wants to get into comedy and whatnot. If you think you're doing good all the time, and this again applies to anything, you're probably not. Like some people are born Dave Chappelle, some people are born LeBron, but most of us have to work really hard to make anything happen. And apparently, I haven't put the work in
comedy,
to get
right.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, and when you get up there, there's a certain, like it's so funny. You're sitting in front of a brick wall right now, and all I'm thinking is the background of most comedy clubs is a brick wall.
Yes, I am not at a comedy club. I am at my house. But this house was built in 1890, a lot of exposed brick, and it just weird sounds. I think sometimes it's just going to fall apart. Like last night, I'm just sitting there in the living room, and I just hear like a loud creak come from the wall. So,
it's also wicked haunted. You know that.
I thought it was at first, but if it is, it's definitely a very nice person who haunts it.
Sure. Casper the Friendly Ghost was by nature friendly.
That's very
a clever name.
Yeah, people you ever listen to I like a lot of creepy podcasts. You ever listen to Jim Harold's Campfire? I think he's from Columbus.
No.
He's a big I know he's a big Ohio State and Browns fan. Yeah, I'm almost certain he's from Columbus. I don't know if he still lives here or not, but he's big on that. He's big on like, people always think of hauntings as being mean. Sometimes they're friendly. I got to try to get him on here. He's got a really popular podcast called Jim Harold's Campfire.
That's awesome.
He tweets about his podcast and the Browns, and that's pretty much it.
Okay.
But yeah, he's big on that. Not all ghosts are mean.
No, they're not. They're not by nature.
Do you believe in ghosts?
I don't know that I do. I don't know that I'm the creepy supernatural stuff. I think it makes for great stories. Like I was in Savannah, Georgia once. Love it. And they offer those ghost tours at night where they take you around the different buildings in Savannah and they tell you how haunted they are. I always just wondered, like, are the ghosts cooperating with the tours? Like, are the ghosts available? Are they the special guest ghost?
Are they like irritated? Hey, we put an extra group in tonight. Can you stay for one more shift here? And if you don't have anywhere to be, I mean, we'll pay you overtime, but we got an extra group in here.
Right. It's bizarre. Like, and I think that's what's great about podcasts overall is the fact that all these people have these like really weird niche passions that they can, opine about for a while. And there's an audience there for everybody. There's an audience out there, might be small, might be niche, whatever, but there's an audience there, people that want to listen. And I find that fascinating about the whole genre. I think it's a really cool thing that's emerged, especially during the pandemic. My God, I don't even know how many podcasts have emerged over the last year.
Too many.
People work home. And entertainers have all started these 5-star podcasts because they frankly needed a place to talk. So,
and I think it's easier to do than people think. By the way, I probably this microphone was like $60. It sounds pretty good, I think. Mm-hmm. And you download Audacity and you're there. You're good. You can spend under $100 and start. I mean, I guess you have your monthly. I have to pay $14 a month to host this, but
well, that's how much Netflix costs.
Yeah, and I don't even pay for that. I just use my in-laws.
Right. Everyone uses somebody else's password, which is the hard thing about Netflix is no one knows who's actually paying for it.
It's true.
They're shelling out all. I mean, my God, what they spent like 20 million a special to Chappelle. I mean, that's a lot of cash.
That is. I think Netflix is doing well, actually.
Yeah, they're fine.
You know who you remind you? You mentioned, God, what was it? You mentioned something that reminded me that someone brought up Chase Daniel the other day, the backup quarterback for the Lions.
Yeah.
I think they said that he's made $37 million and thrown for like 700 yards, which is insane. But again, it came back to the fact he started his career as a backup to Drew Brees and just told himself, I'm going to act exactly like he does and I'll be good. And it worked out. Yeah.
Some of the best jobs on earth are the 32 backup quarterbacks.
It's incredible.
It's an incredible gig. If you can
those guys and like being one of the golfers who was like ranked, I don't know how many they ranked, but like outside of the top 25, but still in the top like 150, where no one knows who you are, but you still make millions of dollars a year.
You know, I have a perfect example of that. Charles Howell III. Charles Howell III has been playing on the tour, I want to say 20, 25 years. He's been around a long time. Could you spot Charles Howell III if you were in the airport?
No.
Of course not. You don't know who he is. He's some dude. He has made like $50 million in his career. Like, what a perfect scenario.
And you don't have to beat your body up. You're always in a nice climate. You have to live in a nice climate, especially if it's Florida. There's no state taxes. You're in good shape there.
Right.
And then we got into broadcasting.
Yeah. Look, I picked wrong. But I also I never picked up a golf. Like it's the funny thing that I hear a lot of parents say is I got to get my kids started in golf, or get my kids started in volleyball, or whatever way they can to figure out how to get the kid a college scholarship. And that does sound really good, right? How good do you have to be at golf to get a college scholarship? How much better than them do you have to be to get on a mini tour? And then how much better than those guys do you have to be to get on the PGA Tour where you make any money?
Yeah, and those mini tours, I hung out with a guy one night who used to be on like 2 steps below PGA. I think it was like Hooters at the time.
Sure.
And like that's a tough life. I mean, it's a lot like minor league baseball where you're just grinding away, and hopefully after a few years, I mean, you're making, I know in the minor leagues, like those guys who aren't big contract, high draft pick guys, they're making like $25,000, $30,000 a year, and they're living in more expensive cities because you have to, because that's where the teams are. And that's, I don't know how I got on that, but yeah, that's tough.
Well,
the golf thing. Yeah. What's that?
Yeah. I mean, you throw the clubs in the Ford Taurus and you drive from, you make like a 9-hour drive from one city to the next city on the Corn Ferry to play the next event. And, you're staying at, a Super 8, maybe a Red Roof, or maybe at just a buddy's house who lives in that city who's going to loan you a bedroom for a week.
Which is great.
And that's the way that you basically afford to play, unless you've got people who are like, you've got, big money people in the family who will float you a giant loan and basically give you $100,000 as a budget to go out on tour and live for a year, which, I mean, those people are rare, but I've heard that story many times about how golfers are that's the difference, right? I mean, it's so hard to be that good. And that's why I think those guys, like, if you can do it, if you're good enough to live that life and not have to pay the penalty, if you will, of being famous for it, incredible life.
Very much incredible. I'm surprised. By the way, why haven't we heard more about Tiger Woods? I feel like I should have more updates on Tiger.
Yeah, I do too. I think it's, but you know what? I mean, it's his life,
Sure, I agree.
Point, it's not a public matter, but I think when you are arguably the most famous athlete in the world, or certainly one of the top 2 or 3, it changes things a little bit. And there's a lot of concern about, whether or not he, forget playing golf again, how well he can walk again, what his mobility is like, once he gets essentially rebuilt. That dude has been through so many surgeries and recoveries and surgery and recovery, man. I mean, it's been unbelievable. And it's amazing how quickly the world changed its tune from, I hope he can play golf again, to, oh, I hope he's alive.
Right.
And then, starting to walk back from there. But yeah, I haven't heard anything, and I'm disappointed because I've, look, from you can separate the two, right? You can separate the
Absolutely.
golfer and the human being. And from the golfer standpoint, I don't know that there's been a more impactful athlete in my lifetime.
Certainly not. I'll let you go after this. We've been doing this for longer than you've got kids and stuff. That I think you're training for a triathlon, by the way, based on what I see on your Instagram. But did you watch the HBO documentary on him?
No, haven't seen it yet because I don't have HBO Max or
get a free
HBO
trial,
period.
Man. When I had COVID, I free trialed everything and did not get off the couch for a week. And I watched so many movies I've been wanting to see. But again, typically I struggle to sit still for 2 hours. But when I had that, I couldn't move for 2 minutes. So it was, if you get time, I recommend the free trial.
I read reviews of it. I read reviews of it, and
makes you feel bad for him, despite that's the same. Going back to comedy, I read Chris Farley's biography this year, a couple months ago. Have you read that?
I have not read it.
Saddest book I've ever read. Not exaggerating, just heartbreaking.
I listened to like I said, a ton of podcasts, and I heard David Spade on a couple, and obviously Spade and Farley were incredibly tight. I'm a huge Saturday Night Live nerd, as you know, and a lot of people who know me know that I like, I grew up with that show, and I know a lot more. Actually, not honest, on my table.
Oh, there you go.
And I've just gone through and read the stories about so many very funny people have horrific personal situations and upbringings, and his story is one of the sadder stories that I can remember, just because he was so self-destructive, but so kind and so generous to so many other people. He just wasn't generous to himself, and that's really heartbreaking to see. And it's amazing how comedy and tragedy aren't all that different. There are a lot of similarities, and sometimes there's that whole formula for comedy where it's tragedy plus time equals comedy. And there's an element of that I think is really true. And I've so many of those great comedians of that era, especially, man, like awful personal stories.
And it's wild that no one, like, he was struggling, went to rehab for like months, and he was struggling for years before anyone found out about it, which I think is amazing to think about now, where you can hide nothing because everyone's got their camera right in their pocket on their phone. But yeah, I would and would not recommend that book. It was, again, I don't read a ton. I try to read like 10 books a year. Just so sad. And kind of similar with Tiger, where obviously not that level of sad, but it's like he never got a break from the time he was, he never really got to be a kid or anything like that. But
really didn't.
That's I guess that's the price of being the greatest ever at what you do, and having more money than most of us could imagine. So
yeah. Well, great athletes who've all got, they've all got these incredible, backstories that are just, it's one of the reasons that I wanted to do this as a profession. And I'm sure probably one of the reasons that you did it for so long is that I love telling other people's interesting stories. And interesting is a very generic term, but basically interesting just means interesting. It doesn't mean tragic. It doesn't mean, joyous. It means real. And interesting is one of the things that I love about my job, because I do nothing but talk to interesting people. Everybody, the best stories are people stories, and that will never not be true. Never. The reason that podcasts exist, like for example this one, you've when I've listened to your episodes and you've talked to interesting people, they don't have to be famous people. They don't have to be people that everybody knows, but they have to be people who have something to say, or some personal experience that makes them uniquely qualified to talk about something. Those people are endlessly interesting, and there's always a place for interesting. So that's the part that I think is awesome about broadcasting, and the thing that, especially in sports, I just love sports, but like, I love people. And that's been one of the biggest problems in the pandemic, is that we have all been away from people. We're talking on Zoom right now. We're in the same city.
Yep.
Like we have been away from people, and we're going to have to go through this transitional process here once we're all vaccinated, and once we've started to move on from the pandemic. Is we're going to have to relearn how to connect with people again. like person to person, like what are our social skills going to be like?
I've already noticed it. As you know, can talk to anyone. I am a very outgoing person. I think I would be you and I both are in the upper, some people struggle with that. We're not.
Uber type A.
I have just not like just making small talk with people, because since I've had it, and since my fiance's got her vaccine, I've kind of been going out and doing a little more stuff, just because at this point we're kind of, I don't know if I want to say bulletproof, but you feel more comfortable, more confident. And yeah, typically I'm zinger, can roll with the best of them, any stranger. And it took a few times of like just being a normal person and talking to a stranger face to face. And I'm with you on that. And for me, it's easy to get back into it. For other people who were uncomfortable talking to strangers in the first place, I do kind of feel bad for them, because it's going to be tough.
Yeah, and that's where I'm really curious how we'll all evolve as a society. But it's one of the ways that our job will kind of push us into that, because the job exists to tell people stories and to talk to them and to create those social relationships and to kind of break down the natural barriers that people have, their defense mechanisms, and get people to be real and honest about themselves. That's going to be harder now, because we're all sort of designed to stay away from each other, and to we've been programmed in that regard, and not obviously with completely understandable merit. The idea was to save people's lives, not to make people socially awkward.
Right.
One's more important than the other. And so hopefully when we transition out of this, that's the biggest thing I hope, is that we can find that ability to reconnect with people again, and go to events together and cheer together and laugh together, and in some cases cry together, and those things that make us human, the emotions that we feel. I look
Make new
forward to
friends.
that.
I love making new friends. That's probably
Absolutely.
the adult skill that I'm proudest of, is my ability to go out and have friends that I didn't have 3 years ago.
Yeah.
And I
And
miss
when you
doing
went
that.
when you went to New York City, and how you basically started over, like you went to a brand new city, you didn't know maybe a handful of people,
Right. And
and
none
you
of them
have
like close, like, hey, I'm going to come over to your apartment and we're just going to chill
right,
together type people.
right. I
But
mean,
yeah. And now I
it's a
have people
hard,
like they're like that. And it's great.
sure, but it's a hard skill for a lot of people. It's just now harder because of what we've all gone through. And I'm curious to see how we'll bounce back. We'll get
What
it.
we're saying is go hug a stranger, tell them you love them, and see how
Exactly
it
right.
goes.
Just grab all the doorknobs and just, for the love of God, just get out there.
Walk into a crowded restaurant and go, hey, can I sit with someone?
That's right.
See what happens.
Can I pull up a chair? Let's share some paella.
Yeah, that would be nice. You done with that spoon?
Everybody grab a spoon and dig in.
That would be good times. All right, I'm gonna let you get out of here. Anything? You're at Jerod NBC4 on Twitter. What do you have anything going on with your Autism Speaks or anything like that you want people to know about?
Yeah, we're bringing back our autism special. Be in early April. You'll see promos for that. We're very excited because we didn't do it last year. We got because of the pandemic, we basically put all our programming toward that, and understandably so. But we're coming back with that. Very excited about it. And we'll be doing our NCAA tournament coverage here pretty soon.
Oh yeah,
next week and all that business. And we are never not busy. So we're if you're at home, I hope you come invest some time with us and watch us on TV and online and all that stuff, because man, our staff is so good. They're really dedicated to it. So come see us.
Yes, that would be good. Do it NBC4 at 6 with my main man, and of course at 11 too. I don't know how you stay up that late anymore. Since the pandemic started, like 10:30, I'm struggling to keep my eyes open.
That's a really good point, because it's not like people used to have to get up earlier to get ready to go to their office job, and now people's homes are their offices, so their prep times are different, or the way, like for example, in the morning, the way that they're getting ready for work in the morning is completely different than what it used to be. So yeah, it's affected people's use of media and the times they check in. It's a complete, like for example, we have a 4:00 newscast that does extraordinarily well. More people are home at 4:00 than they used to be.
Makes sense.
So it makes a lot of sense. And when people go back to offices, who knows how that evolves?
That's a lot of news, man. That was, I thought I was doing a lot of live hits when I was doing 7 a day on that morning show.
Yeah. How about that?
Yep. So good luck to everyone out there who still has the courage to work, because that's a hard job. And oftentimes, unfortunately, not because of the people in the building, but because of people outside of the building, a thankless job. But hopefully, I think people pay attention to local news more, and that will turn the tide on that, because you won't have the talking heads giving their opinions. You'll have your local people giving actual facts. And if they do give their opinions, they're getting called in and getting yelled at, and they don't have $1 million contract that they can opt out of and get a buyout. So it gets a little better when you, keep it to the people who are right in your backyard. So
You're not wrong.
I know, except about Ty Detmer. I was wrong about that.
You've got to give yourself a pass.
I won't.
Dude.
What a loser. All right. Anything else? Did I miss anything?
No, we're good.
I appreciate you so
it.
much.
Great,
Promise
great
me today's March 9th. How about before, I guess, let's see, before June, because you're still, I assume you're not vaccinated yet. I am. I'm kind of good with whatever. Before June, we will either go golfing together or we will go on a lunch date before work.
Oh, now those are two.
Or we can do both.
Those are two very enticing options. You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to have my people call your people, and we're going to set that up. Have my machine call your machine.
That would be good. I actually have got my machine right here. So
that's great.
You just have your machine do it and we'll make it happen.
Yeah. This can all be arranged.
Yes. All right, pal. I appreciate you so much, and we will talk soon.
You got it, buddy.
Jerod Smalley. Goodbye, sir.